It's time to talk about WWDC 2019. And that's because it's actually happening literally next week. So there you go, just a few days left until one of the biggest Apple events of the year. Also, this is the second video with this new setup. We've actually made some improvements with the lighting, so hopefully my face is a bit brighter now. The mic is a bit closer, so the audio should be a tiny bit better. Yeah, let me know in the comments how this new setup looks like. Hopefully everything looks nice. So since we're so close to WWDC, this is going to be our last video on this topic. So here's everything that I expect Apple to announce and also release next week. And also we're actually doing a brand new giveaway of a new iPod Touch 7 generation because yes, Apple just released yesterday the iPod Touch 7. It's quite an interesting device because it's not so interesting, but maybe some of you wanted. We're actually doing a giveaway, like I said. All you have to do is just be a follower on Instagram @ZenofTech and leave a comment on this post with the iPod Touches, the renders, saying why do you want to win one and also which color do you want to get. And I'll be announcing the winner on Instagram via DM and story on July the 1st. But yeah, for now, here's everything to expect at next week's WWDC 2019. Okay, so WWDC is usually a software-focused event. You know, WWDC comes from the Worldwide Developers Conference, and this is where Apple showcases their next version of iOS, macOS, watchOS, and tvOS to the developers so that they can update their apps in time for the public release, the full release, which is usually in September. And WWDC happens in June every year, and this year it would be between June the 3rd and June the 7th. It lasts an entire week because Apple would be having workshops for developers during that time, so it won't be just a single event, but that big event that you're all waiting for, that would be happening on June the 3rd at 10 a.m. Pacific daytime. So this translates to about 6 p.m. here in the UK. Okay, so with every single new Apple event, Apple usually includes a few hints in the actual event invites as to what they will announce at the event. The most notable one for me was actually back in 2014, if you guys remember that, when Apple scheduled the iPhone 6 event on September the 9th. So you had 2 9s, September 9th, and when you invert that, you know, you get 2 6s. A hint at the 2 new iPhone 6s that Apple ended up releasing, the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus. And when it comes to this year's invites, they do look really nice design-wise. So they got this neon look to them, which could point at an iOS 13 redesign. Now, since all of them had this dark look, I think it's, you know, a very strong hint at iOS 13 finally including that long-awaited dark mode. And something quite interesting that I've noticed in these invites is that they all feature an Animoji with its head blown off, hopefully by excitement, and a few icons coming out of that Animoji's head. We have Xcode symbols, an interesting new calculator app which could point towards the iPad finally getting its own calculator app, a lightning symbol, so maybe some new Thunderbolt accessories such as a new Apple 6K display, more about that in a second. There's a metal symbol which points towards probably Apple dropping OpenGL support from macOS 10.15, which we already know about. And more importantly, the fact that these Animojis have their head blown off kind of points towards something very exciting that Apple would be launching, which I do believe would be the new Mac Pro, or at least a tease of it. Okay, so these were the invites. Now here is everything to expect. So since WWDC is, you know, a software event, the main things that we would see would be software related. And the main one would be, of course, iOS 13. So that's the first one. And most of the features that I'm going to mention in this video are either coming from developer Guilherme Rambo or from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman. So yeah, huge shout outs to both of them for finding these, and make sure you give them a follow on Twitter, links below. Okay, so the main change in iOS 13 would of course be that long-awaited dark mode. So this will work on all devices supporting iOS 13, which are said to be all the iPhones from the iPhone 6 and newer, possibly even just the iPhone 6s and newer in some cases. So more about that in future videos. The support devices are not yet confirmed. The volume HDD is finally going to be updated as well. Messages will allow users to have a profile picture and a display name available to everyone that they send a message to. There's going to be a brand new Find My iPhone app, which would actually include Find My Friends built in. Maps is getting some new features such as frequent locations, reminders is getting a new look. So many of the first-party apps would actually be redesigned. And then Yes, finally, the iPad is getting a huge update or upgrade with iOS 13. So we're getting a brand new home screen with possibly widgets, the ability to use multiple windows in the same app, as well as stackable cards and multitasking. So rather than just being able to use 2 apps or 3 of them actually at the same time, you will now be able to use significantly more since you'll be able to have multiple instances of the same app running at the same time. Also, and this is a big one, mouse support is apparently coming to the iPad. This is huge. Also, proper external monitor support is also coming, so you should be able to use the external monitors in 16:9 aspect ratios, also in extended mode, not just in mirrored mode. The Files app would be improved heavily. So yeah, there are lots of improvements coming to the iPad in iOS 13, improvements which would finally bring it closer to the Mac when it comes to the functionality. And Apple definitely needs that, especially when they're promoting this as a laptop replacement. And we'll do a more in-depth video on everything that iOS 13 will feature, so definitely keep an eye on that video by the end of the week. But for now, this was everything, all the big features that are coming in iOS 13. Next week, basically. Yeah, we'll have iOS 13 beta next week. Now, the second big new update would be in terms of macOS, with macOS 10.15. So this would be one of the biggest changes coming to the Mac ever since the Mac was actually launched. And that's because it would actually support iOS apps. So yeah, it would be able to run pretty much any iOS app that developers release an update to on the Mac, which is just incredible. So yeah, we'll finally be able to download Netflix movies offline on the Mac with the Netflix app, because at the moment you need, the actual iOS app. So yeah, that's pretty awesome, and you'll be able to run pretty much any iOS app on the Mac. So this is called Project Marzipan, and this is Apple's transition to a unified operating system. It's also Apple's transition to an OS that would allow them to have Macs with Apple's own A-series processors. So step one was actually last year when Apple announced the big change. In macOS Mojave, for example, Apple already converted the HomeKit app, the News app, Voice Memo, Stocks. So yeah, these were iOS apps that were converted to macOS. Step 2 of Marzipan is coming this year, when developers will be getting full support for compiling their own apps in Xcode for both iOS and macOS at the same time. Aside from this, another big change coming to macOS 10.15 would be the ability to use your iPad as a second monitor for your Mac natively. Before you had to use third-party apps, but now you're able to do this natively. So that's pretty cool. Also, screen time and iMessage effects are coming to the Mac finally, as well as a Find My iPhone app, which would work on the Mac. Now, another big change coming to macOS 10.15 would be the fact that 32-bit apps would no longer run at all. And also apps would need to use Metal, the Metal API, as OpenGL would be dropped as well. So yeah, from the looks of it, 95% or so of the Mac apps would actually stop working in macOS 10.15, which is pretty bad. Yes, developers will have to update those apps to work. And, there's still a ton of older apps which would be left unupdated. So yeah, long story short, avoid updating to macOS 10.15 for quite some time. Okay, now the third big software update would come in terms of the Apple Watch with watchOS 6. Now, of course, there's also the next version of tvOS. I mean, let's be honest, who really cares about tvOS? And we also haven't had any reports, any leaks, or anything in terms of tvOS, so I'm just gonna skip it for now. But yeah, tvOS would also be getting an update as well. Now, in terms of watchOS 6, there are some big changes coming as well. So a new app store that will run directly on the Apple Watch itself. Apparently, there's a calculator app, okay. Hoping that the iPad gets that one as well, because otherwise it's a bit ironic. There's a voice memo app that's also coming, and an emoji and Memoji stickers are also coming to watchOS. Apparently there will also be a few new complications that you can use with watch faces for rain data and level of noise, ambient noise. That's pretty useful. And yes, new watch faces will be added in watchOS 6. And there also might be a sleep tracker coming to some extent in watchOS 6. Not fully sure of this yet, but it could be something that will be included either in the next Apple Watch, the Apple Watch Series 5, or at least we'll see it as an update to some extent in watchOS 6. Okay, so this was all about the software, so what about the hardware? Well, WWDC is mostly a software-focused event, but we have seen hardware unveiled in the past, so here's everything to expect in terms of that. Realistically, the new 2019 MacBook Pros have already been released. We've actually done a 20 things you didn't know video on those yesterday, so you can watch it here in case you missed it. Yeah, so we have the new MacBook Pros. The new iPod Touch 7th generation was also launched quietly yesterday as well. Yeah, which is basically the same as the 6th gen, looks identical, same display size. The only difference from what I've seen at least is the Apple A10 processor, that's it. Same camera, Apple A10 processor, and that's it. The new 2019 iMacs also got released as well. So the only major Mac that Apple has yet to unveil for this year at least is the brand new Mac Pro. And we already know that Apple is working on this, and they even said that they will release it this year in 2019. So a WWDC tease would actually make a lot of sense, and then a full release further down the line in December or, at least November or so. Fun fact, Apple has actually done this in the past with the previous 2013 Mac Pro, as well as the iMac Pro, so this is what I believe will be the case at WWDC, so yeah, we'll find out in a week. We've actually done a few videos on this new Mac Pro, so essentially this will be Apple's most powerful Mac. It will be a fully modular system, an upgradable system, and yes, you guessed it, it won't be cheap at all. So personally, I'm really looking forward to it as a device, even though I don't think we'll get one. At least not if the price ends up being as expensive as, you know, it was leaked. Yeah, 15K. This is what we've seen rumored. So hopefully it's not like that, but yeah, we'll see. But alongside this new Mac Pro, Apple would also be launching a brand new Apple display, which is, I believe, to be the name as well. Apple discontinued the Apple Thunderbolt displays, by the way, in 2016, when they launched the ultrafine 5K and ultrafine 4K displays with LG, but they haven't launched anything first party since. Recently, Apple has actually discontinued both the ultrafine 5K and 4K monitors, but last week they've actually launched a brand new one. So there you go, this is the brand new LG ultrafine 4K monitor. It now comes in 24 inches up from 21.5. It features 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports up from 1, which is really cool because you can actually daisy chain this with multiple Thunderbolt 3 devices, so that's the best feature, I would say. But yeah, Apple hasn't updated the 27-inch display yet. So my guess is that they just won't, and they'll release the new rumored 32-inch 6K micro LED display that Ming Chi Kuo talked about before. So this will work with all the modern Thunderbolt 3 Macs, and this would be a proper pro display that Apple users, pro users at least, have been demanding for years. So again, it won't be cheap. And apparently you would also be able to easily switch between your color profiles from the OS, and even, finally, even turn off True Tone for specific apps, which is hopefully something that Apple integrates natively in macOS 10.15, because it's really annoying having to constantly disable True Tone whenever I want to do any proper, you know, photo or video work. But yes, this monitor, like I said, it won't be cheap, and there is a chance that we'll see it released, at least teased, if not released, at WWDC. And finally, we know that Apple is working on future Macs that would actually have their own A-series processors in them. This would not only allow Apple to achieve significantly better performance than, you know, what they can currently achieve at the moment with Intel processors, but also have much thinner Macs. Imagine an iMac as thin as an iPad Pro. Also, no cooling at all. It won't be required. Now, the 12-inch MacBook hasn't been updated since 2017, June 2017. So that's actually 2 years now. So WWDC 2019 might be when Apple would finally update the 12-inch MacBook. Also, interesting enough, we've actually had a leak recently, a Geekbench leak of a MacBook running on an Apple A-series processor, and the scores were just insane. So the CPU that got leaked was a 12-core processor, which scored 6,912 for the single-core performance, which is higher than any Mac that Apple sells today. Yes, even higher than obviously the iMac Pros, the 18-core ones, or even the 2019 iMacs or the MacBook Pros, as well as 24,000, over 24,000 for the multi-core, which again is really close to the 8-core i9 MacBook Pro. And this is rumored to be on a 12-inch MacBook with no cooling. So imagine what Apple would be able to do if they add some cooling to this and, you know, add it to the MacBook Pro or even the iMac Pro. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to all this. Like, really looking forward to this. But yeah, there we go. This was everything we expect to see at WWDC 2019. Let me know in the comments, what are you excited for the most? Obviously Mac Pro in my case. Also, don't forget about the iPod Touch 7th Gen giveaway. Just follow on Instagram @ZoneOfTech and leave a comment on this post saying why do you want to win and what color. And I'll be announcing the winners via DM and story on Instagram on July the 1st. Do subscribe notifications if you want to see more cool tech videos like this one. Hopefully you guys like the new setup. Again, let me know in the comments, how does it look now compared to the previous video? The light should be better. Again, the sound should also be better than the last one. We're constantly making improvements to this, so maybe some things will change in the next one. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Zone of Tech, signing out. Cheers.